This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums, pick one to discuss with us on the show, get access to bonus episodes, and our private Discord community. Keep the podcast ad-free and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. Jay, another year is about to wrap up. Can you believe it? 2025 is almost in the books.
It goes so fast.
It
Do you
does.
still find yourself when you look at the year, like written out at a moment today, like where I wrote out the year 2025 and I just like, it didn't make sense to me. It's like, it just doesn't look right.
Well, because, you know, Blade Runner takes place in like 2017.
Oh
And
my God.
yeah, there's a lot of aspects of living in the 2020s where you're like, oh, I thought we would have jetpacks or, you know, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And we can't even get back to the moon. We got there with a calculator and, you know,
Some dental floss.
some dental floss and we can't get back to the moon. But yeah, it does seem to go faster. Life seems to be busier. I mean, that's where adults with kids and families and jobs and a totalitarian government. I mean, everything is making life a little bit weirder. And
We're swimming in more music than we could ever possibly absorb.
most of it made by humans.
Yeah.
And
We should bookmark that to come back to
Exactly.
at a later year.
also, just want to confirm we are still human. We have not
Mhm.
been taken over by our AI replicants. We're going to move over to web. What are we on? Web 3.0, 4.0? How many webs are there now, Jay? Which one's the free web where the humans use and then the robots use the other web?
I think we'll have to start making sure like we do a lot of coughing and making weird noises during the podcast so people know that it's a human and it's not AI.
Oh, we're good then because we say and like 50 times an
well,
episode.
the AI would be able to do that soon, but it'll be it's like super weird,
It'll be like
random things.
it'll be very uncomfortable. So, as tradition around here, at the end of the season, at the end of the year, we like to revisit what exactly went on in this previous year. We like to talk about, you know, new discoveries from our patrons and from the people that suggested albums through our website, digmeoutpodcast.com. We like to talk about, you know, we did a couple roundtables this year. There's all sorts of things we like to cover. What's something you'd like to cover first, Jay? What's one of your categories for 2025 that we can look back upon?
Let's talk about what are some of your. So we've done some 2000s episodes this year, and so we've got a couple to consider there. But we did, you know, a normal slate of 90s albums, both through polls and through our patrons. So I thought we could break down maybe a couple that stood out to us that were new discoveries. You know, I think it was another good year of us listening to a ton of music we had never heard before. And I know at least a couple of these have stuck with me. I even went out and bought them.
Ooh,
Some physical media
look at
was
you.
purchased as a result of this. That doesn't happen for me. I try not to add more physical things that I have to deal with in my life. So
Sure.
to go out and buy a vinyl, or even like buy MP3s on Bandcamp or something is kind of a big thing now for me. So yeah, so I got a little list of stuff here.
Okay.
So for 90s, a couple that stood out to me were Hawksley Workman for Him and Girls. That was a really unusual album. Super ambitious, very theatrical. It kind of reminded me of John Bryan and like Tom Waits and the New Pornographers and a bunch of interesting stuff. I think it was, if memory serves, maybe all recorded by himself. So that was a fun album. Kill Holiday is the one that I went out and bought. I actually got that on vinyl. Um, super cool, like uh crossover between like almost new romantics, shoegaze, and emo.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that, whenever it comes up, it perks up my ears. Whenever I have it on random, I just hear one of those tracks. It's just a really cool sound. It's very moody, but there's some quality songs there. The Connells, or what was the other pronunciation of that band?
Canals. I don't know.
The Canals. One Simple Word.
Mm-hmm.
That one stood out to me because it still kind of amazes me that came out in 1990. Just very ahead of its time in terms of sounding a little, in that space around like maybe Buffalo Tom or Jim Blossoms, that kind of sound, but really sophisticated, good songwriting. And then the top two new discoveries from the 90s for me were both from artists who are better known as guitar players, uh, which I thought was interesting. That sort
Mm-hmm.
of when I looked at my list, one was Nuno, Schizophonic, which really surprised me in how diverse it was and how strong the songwriting was across the whole thing. And maybe even go listen to some of his other solo and side projects just quickly. And it confirmed what I thought, in that I assumed we would go into that album, it would be like a lot of reaching for like trendy 90s stuff, like trying to
Mm-hmm.
be relevant, you know. Uh, but it for the most part didn't do that. But some of his other solo stuff and side projects does do that. So it sort of confirmed for me this was a sweet spot, and just sticking the songs, being inspired by what was going on, but you know, delivering a solid record. And then the last one was Adrian Belew, Young
Mm-hmm.
Lions. I still, uh, I'm surprised how much I like that album. Every time I hear a song from that, I'm just blown away by the songwriting, I even like the production. It just reminds me of a lot of 70s artists that I came to like, or maybe even struggled a little bit completely getting into, but there's something about the way that he delivers and writes that just work for me. So, there's a lot of similarities, I would say, to probably, some of David Bowie's work, especially in the like early 80s and late 70s, but
Mm-hmm.
he's maybe less eccentric than David Bowie. So, and just has a different, I don't know, musicality to him that connected with me better. So that would probably be my top discovery. I went out and bought that one on Bandcamp because it's not on streaming, unfortunately. And yeah, I still like it quite a bit. So those are my top five new discoveries in the 90s albums we did. Anything for you?
Well, I 100% agree with you on Adrian and Nuno. Those were unexpected records that, again, like you said, guitar players, I didn't really know what they could do as far as being songwriters, and they were both shockingly interesting and deep and diverse, which was
Hmm.
really cool and unexpected. I agree with you on the Kill Holiday record. Both of us enjoyed that album. There were a couple that, I mean, in terms of discoveries, the Lee Harvey Oswald band, Blastronaut, which we both
Yeah.
enjoyed, the song Rocket 69 is in my playlist, and that comes up every once in a while. And I'm like,
Hmm.
this is such a kick ass song. Like, this is up there with some of the best garage rock of the late 90s and 2000s that we were listening to. And then, although it did not get the worthy album mention, I did like a number of songs on that Coxbar album that we revisited, like
Hmm.
Bats Out, which is a crazy little blues rock song about getting your bats out at the bar to beat up unruly patrons. No knives, no guns, get your bats
Yeah.
out. I love that chorus. And so that was really interesting to hear a punk band from essentially the beginning of punk, but how they evolved into the 90s
Hmm.
and are currently, like, I think they're doing like their final tour. Like, they're coming to the United States next year as their last tour. Cause I mean, those guys are, they're like their 70s now. They're or 60s or 70s. They've got to chill out at some point. Um, there were like you, the Connells was really good. The some of the records that I did not know anything about, but Ground Components had a lot of interesting stuff. Same thing with Non-Intentional Life Form, which were just weird records that we had no experience with anything going on with them. So that was really cool. We finally got around to Fig Dish, which I'm surprised we haven't done the Fig Dish or off Fig Dish album in since the beginning of the podcast, even though they've been mentioned probably as much as any other band because of their Chicago connection and their Chip connection and all that. But it was finally cool to get to talk about that album. And then one of the last albums we did, I was not expecting to like the Eve 6 album as much as I did. I pretty much despised that single for a long time. I put it in the same category as Lit's single and like Vertical Horizon and all these like late 90s power pop, punk pop singles that they were so overplayed and repetitive that I just completely ignored the bands. And then when you get to listen to the album, you go, oh, okay, this is a lot smarter than I realized. So maybe that's a good, you say in the literary world, don't judge a book by its cover. We should say, don't judge an album by its single. Is maybe what we should say.
Yeah. Or or the band's company. Because I think a lot of the bands you mentioned, I was in the same boat of just grouping them all together as really kind of throwaway bands.
Yeah.
Like Shallow, not a lot there. Had a big single or two. Nothing really you're gonna find if you dig into it. Just kind of toss it in the trash bin and move on culturally. But yeah, I was surprised it was really stood out to me. One of the other 2000s albums we did, you mentioned Ground Components, which I agree was really fun in that it had a sense of rebellion and a little bit like kind of snarky and angsty, but it was also fun because it has this like 67 70s rock soul feel to it. And it just had a spirit to it. I don't know, there's just something about it where it just walks that line, which I think in the 2000s we started to hear that was kind of fun, where some of these bands were still had an attitude, but it wasn't as much about like kind of being depressed and staring at your feet as it was like, taking action and just, being overall a little bit more up tempo. So that was one that stood out. Speedstar is another one that whenever that comes up, I'm surprised how good those songs are. And just how much I'm liking the way that album sounds. It's a bit of, I know, we reviewed it well, but it's holding up, as I revisit these after not listening to them for a couple months. That's one that, pretty much across the board, it's still pretty compelling. It falls in that Travis, Coldplay, Radiohead, Star Sailor kind of space.
What else worked for us this year in terms of, we should talk about our favorite, we have a whole nother podcast of 80s metal and such, and we did revisit quite a few albums from not just the 80s, but we did a couple of 70s episodes. But do you have a favorite discovery this year amongst our variety of 70s and 80s rock?
Maybe Icon. Just I think in reviewing that album and publishing the episode, discovered a lot of the lore around it, which was interesting, and that the passion, the fan base that that album has, and the backstory as we got into the episode of how it was made and a lot of the expectations around it. And I think that's a theme that cuts across both our 80s metal and 70s stuff podcast, and this one is expectations is just such a huge part of this business in terms of how albums are promoted and whether they're considered successful and the band gets supported, or if the band's happy and makes a career. It's all about like how commercially successful do you want to be? Does your label want you to be? Do you meet that expectation? So that's just a good example of, I think, both the business side of it and also just musically that there's some Pretty cool stuff on there. So Icon for me would probably be the big, sort of discovery.
Okay. I'm going to go with a 70s album and an 80s album. So a 70s album, the Captain Beyond self-titled release, I really enjoyed. I still have uh, songs in my playlist that I listen to. Also, the Buffalo Volcanic Rock, which was um,
Oh yeah.
at the beginning of the year. Again, I have multiple songs from that album in my massive rock playlist that come up, and I really enjoy hearing that style of like blues influenced 70s hard rock that hasn't made the turn into like metal yet. And which then, we obviously did a ton of cool um, metal this year. Getting to hear the Motorhead album all the way through was fun, but you know, in terms of stuff that I didn't know at all, because I've obviously heard Motorhead, in the
Right.
past.
Right.
Um, there were a number of really, the Lizzie Borden album. I've never listened to any Lizzie Borden. There was a lot of really cool stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
that was on that record. Um, I'd never really listened to any thrash metal beyond Metallica, Megadeth, a little bit of Slayer, and a little bit of Anthrax. So getting to hear the Testament album was really interesting.
Hmm.
And then the Queensryche album was just a really good way to understand how that band evolved into something so interesting.
Hmm.
You can hear the seeds of it on that album, even though it's not up to what those future albums would be. It's still, you get the you get the basis of what is going to be an amazing band for a couple of years at least, and then they're going to fall off. But it's a really cool record.
We, I think, talked about it in the episode, but it still blows my mind about how that band seemingly did everything right. Like they they still got successful and
Yep.
then just fell off a cliff. You're like, this is all textbook. This is exactly the way you're supposed to do it. Like build up your fan base. They were trying to like maintain credibility. Like artistically, they were doing what they wanted. And then in some point in the 90s, everything explodes up. And now there's a version of the band, but it's just in contrast for how big they got by the late 80s to where they are now is just incredible.
I mean, I probably should go back and listen. I know that what was it, Here in the Now Frontier was the album after
Yes,
Empire, I think, or
yeah,
Promised Land.
Promised Land might be it.
Promised Land, and then that. I don't know anything from those albums. Like
Yeah.
I need to maybe give them a shot, but it felt like they were like duds when they came out. And again, the marketplace had changed. So
Yeah, I mean, I saw them on tour for, let me see here. It probably would have been Promised Land, and they were still touring arenas, headlining. Maybe it was Here in the Now Frontier. It was one of those two albums. It was mid 90s. They were
mhm.
still touring and headlining arenas, and Typo Negative was opening to give you a sense of like where things were headed.
Huh.
um, and that was probably the last time I think they saw an arena stage I would think was that tour.
Yeah. Sadly.
Yeah.
All right. What else are we gonna do? What else are we gonna cover here?
Well, I think we should hit the our unanimous consensus worthy albums.
Yes.
So I just have uh the 90s and 2000s here, but these are the 20 albums um that we reviewed that we agreed on, which doesn't happen every week, as you
No, I
can
mean,
tell by this
out of
list.
how many episodes did we do? 52
Yeah,
plus
just about half
24.
we agreed. Uh, all the others were split, with only one getting a decent single from both of us. But we won't get into that.
No.
You have to go back and listen to figure out which one that is. So our list of unanimous worthy albums in chronological order. So, and this, I would use this if you want to go back and find sort of the best that we reviewed. Check out these albums and then go check out the episodes. Papa Vegas, Hello Vertigo, And You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead, Source Tags and Codes. Fiona Apple, Title. I'd forgotten we had done that one. That was
Mm-hmm.
fun. Guided by Voices, Alien Lanes. Kill Holiday, Somewhere Between the Wrong is Right. Social Distortion, Social Distortion. The Lee Harvey Oswald Band, Blasternaut. Non-Intentional Life Form. Yushi? I
Sure.
don't know. Ground Components, An Eye for a Brow and a Tooth for a Pick. The Connells, One Simple Word. Hawksley Workman, For Him and the Girls. Fig Dish, That's What Love Songs Often Do. Greta, No Biting. That's the second Greta album we did, amazingly. Love
Mm-hmm.
Cup, super obscure band. Griefus, Groinks, and Sheet. Driving and Crying, Fly Me Courageous, which James Barber, the manager of the band, joined us for. That was a lot of fun.
Yep.
Adrian Belew, Young Lions. Eve's Plum, Envy. Nuno, Schizophrenic. Speedstar, Bruises You Can Touch. And Eve 6, Eve 6, we talked about. So that's our, I think, probably best of the year.
A lot of agreement, but more disagreement, which is what keeps this podcast
Yep,
spicy. We got the spice.
this is true.
I had completely forgot we did Alien Lanes.
I do too. There
Uh,
was a couple on there that you just, you know, we're in and out.
yeah, but
But
that's okay.
this gives us an opportunity to go back. Like I said, prepping for this was like, oh yeah, we did do that record and re-listen to it and experience it. But
So is now a good time to talk about some changes?
yeah, go for it.
So for 2026, which is next year, obviously. Although if you're listening to this in 2026, welcome to the future. And we're going to be adding in our 90s feed more 2000s episodes because honestly, a lot of people are interested in us talking about them. We've had people who are even picking albums for like, can I pick a 2000s album? Because you guys do them already. We're like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. And
Yep.
not only just because it's a bigger pool of albums for us to suggest, but in the same way when we talk about the 70s and 80s albums, we can talk about their influence upon the 90s.
Yeah.
It's nice when we talk about the aughts albums and go, you were listening to this and you can hear this influence from the 90s, or you can hear this influence from the 80s into the 90s and get a much broader perspective of the music that we're digging out. It doesn't mean we're going to, we're not getting rid of doing 90s records. We're still going to do 90s records, but we want to just add more aughts records and balance that out. So we just get more diversity because there's a lot of sounds and ideas. I was thinking about this the other day. There is a reaction to the 90s
Yes.
in the early 2000s.
Yep.
In the garage bands of the White Stripes and the Black Keys, in the New York dance punk scene of the Rapture and Chick Chick Chick, in the post Britpop sound of Block Party and the Kaiser Chiefs and those bands. So there's a lot of stuff that, in as much the 90s were a reaction to 80s and 70s, there's an aughts reaction that is very interesting to us because it's in our wheelhouse of what we were listening to. So
yeah,
the goal is to just introduce some more of that without creating, a ton of more work.
Well, we got, I think, a good perspective on the 90s at this point, so we'll keep building that out. But it's been fun to apply that now to 2000s albums. Yeah, both in terms of inspiration, but also reaction. So there's a whole bunch of new sounds that happen in the 2000s. Some of them are tie back directly to things we heard in the 90s, and some are almost, trying to be the opposite or skip over and more inspired by the 70s, in some cases, or very post rock. There's a lot of other super creative directions rock music is going during that decade that kind of fizzled out, unfortunately. So that'll be, tends to be part of the story when we review these albums. Is you and I were in a band at that time, and there was a bunch of exciting things happening that you could imagine going in a bunch of fun directions and being very successful, and most of it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Instead, we're left with Coldplay and I guess the Killers. I don't know who else are we
Muse.
left with.
Well, Muse, I guess, is technically 90s, but
Yeah, Muse is a
yeah.
good example of like there were some super cool things they were doing in the early 2000s that were
Oh, yes.
looked
God,
very
yes.
promising, and then I think it's at this point fairly you know uh, watered down, if you could say, or
Yeah.
not exactly what we envisioned after
No.
hearing the second or third album. So just examples of all kinds of places we can go, and the
Hmm.
community's been excited about it and supporting it. We've been doing 2000s bonus episodes for a couple years now, so
Probably
it
at
makes
least
sense to
6
make them
years.
free and get them out there.
I mean, bonus episodes started with the 80s, but then we converted them over to aughts. So we're probably doing the aughts episodes for at least 3 or 4 years, but then we did the 80s episodes before that. And, we have the multiple podcasts. We're going to be doing the same thing with the 80s. We're going to introduce more 70s episodes because those have gotten some really cool sounds and ideas that we did not anticipate.
Those have been wild.
It's such uncharted territory, but it's such an interesting thing where you can hear,
Yeah,
oh my God, I can hear where Black Sabbath is
yeah,
coming from, or I can hear where, the new wave of British heavy metal is pulling from 4 years, 5 years before that happened. So, as just general music fans who like hearing new things that
hmm
don't necessarily have to be released today, but just something an album released in 1971 that we've never heard is still new music to us.
yeah.
So
I was born in '74, so I definitely remember the '70s. And there's a catalog of music that I'm sure is you know imprinted in my brain and imprinted in your brain. But it's also the only decade we've done where we have legit like no context for some of this stuff. Like it was either
mhm.
released before we were born, or we had no way of ever even coming close to it. So it's fun in that way because some of it is almost like it came from another planet. Like,
Yes.
it reminds me of like when we get a lot of our Australian picks, which you know I relate to as somewhat similar to maybe something I heard in the U.S., but really feels like it's from another world.
Yep.
Most of these '70s albums, like the poll winner we're going to be doing to kick off the year on the '70s and '80s Dig Me Out feed is going to be Leaf Hound, Growers of Mushroom. To give you some idea of where this is taking us, it's almost like that could be a brand new band that just came out, and we wouldn't even know the difference.
Exactly. I'm gonna guess that when they're talking about mushrooms, they're talking about like real 1970s tripping psychedelic mushrooms, as opposed to the mushroom infused kombucha drinks that you can get today at
Right.
your
I don't
local
think they're
grocery
talking about
store.
mushroom coffee.
The mushrooms have evolved, like in The Last of Us, the spores have evolved.
I don't think these are mushrooms that, help you poop. I think they're have a different purpose.
They make your brain poop. So that's the plan, and it's just an opportunity for us to explore more stuff. So
Here's the cool thing. So now if you go to digmeoutpodcast.com, we're going to open it up so you can suggest from the '70s all the way through 2010. So we're going to have, all 4 decades available to recommend albums that we'll put into
mhm.
polls. And then if you become a patron, you can step up and just pick one or even two and join us on the podcast. So you've got 4 decades of music to pick from,
Yep.
of lost and obscure albums that you think deserve another look, another listen. So just more variation and an ability to pick things, and you know, outside of just the '90s and the '80s metal scene.
I was talking to one of our patrons over Messenger about being able to pick from any decade, and they were like, "I will be frozen. I already have a hard enough time picking for the 90s. You want me to pick for over 4 decades of music? I will never be able to make a choice." So sorry if you want to stick to just picking 90s albums, you are more than welcome to keep doing that. Lots of people have who are picking records for us have said, I want to be able to pick. And even before we even thought of this, they were like coming to us and said, hey, I don't really have any more 90s picks, which is legitimate. I mean, at this point, my list of what we would I would like to cover is actually pretty low because we've covered so much. Either we've already done the album or we've covered the band. So I'm just looking for like artists that we haven't covered. But we over the last few years, we've knocked out a lot of big artists and names that I knew but had not ever gotten to. So this is like an opportunity to keep expanding and keep us constantly, evolving and listening to music that has impacted us that we don't even know.
I think it fully captures at this point now that we've broadened it to all four decades, and there's two feeds there, so you get, if you're a little, either older or into the stuff that you'd never heard or whatever, if you're into the more of the like 80s metal, 70s heavy rock stuff, we got a feed for that. We got a feed like after the alt rock thing happens, obviously the 90s is very much about the reaction to alternative music, and then even now into the 2000s, we talked about the inspiration and also the rebellion against that. But that's kind of the bookends of Gen X, right? I mean, you could argue it keeps going further, maybe, but largely that's the heart of Gen X contribution to music. So, hopefully, the bigger story there starts to come to light, and our generation doesn't get completely lost between the millennials and and boomers in terms of contribution to music.
So that's what's happening for next year. That's what happened last year. We've enjoyed this ride, and we're going to keep riding on with all of our awesome patrons who continue to support us year after year, and the new people who have joined this year, and all the folks that contribute in the Discord to keep that lively. It's been a blast. We look forward to keep doing more stuff. We also need to thank, we had a lot of cool authors and contributors outside the podcast. Like you mentioned, James Barber. We had a lot of really interesting, Bob Halligan Jr. came on, and we had Serena Fergasi, who we did the Pearl Jam book with, and we had we had Rob McCauley.
Yep, on the 80s Metal podcast.
On the 80s Metal podcast, and we did the Iron Maiden book with I'm blanking on Daniel Buckspan. Yep. Daniel Buckspan. Yeah, so we had a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, those two books are super. So the Iron Maiden book, it's what is it called? Iron Maiden at 50, I think. And the Pearl Jam Live. Those were a lot of fun. That was just a good one. The books are great, so just be able to get in there and spend some time with them. The pictures are amazing. The ratings, amazing. But it also allowed us to kind of go deeper into some topics I don't think we may not have naturally went into, because that's what the books were, sort of focused on and who they were experts in. So both of those episodes were a lot of fun, and I think people would love them if they go back and they're into those bands, go back and revisit them, but also pick those books up, because if you're a fan of the band, they're just great coffee table books.
Yep. We had Tom Bajor on for the book that he wrote.
The Lollapalooza book.
So we had a lot of great, really interesting folks on. I forgot Alex Williams came on for the 80s Glam Metal Roundtable with James Barber. So looking forward to doing more of that in the coming year and in future years. I think we're like well over 800 episodes now. We're going to be hitting, 900 in the next 2 years, and then we're going towards 1,000. I think by year 19 or something, we're going to hit 1,000 episodes. Maybe we'll see. How many podcasts have gotten to 1,000 episodes?
Well, I'm sure there's some dailies that have gotten there, but
they're not daily. I mean, I was going to say, like,
in terms of recorded content, because you have to think about, like, we're doing I would assume our average length is 30 minutes because some of the early ones were short, but a lot of the
We have a lot of like long interview
Yeah.
ones too. So I'm going to guess 30 to 45 minutes is the average, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. Well, we've talked about it. You can go to digmeoutpodcast.com. That's where all of the episodes are, plus our history of the band posts, new release roundups. And then if you do choose to become a paid subscriber, that's when you get to pick an episode, or when you can pick an episode from any decade going forward, 70s, 80s, 90s, and aughts. It's also where you can read new release reviews and get access to that Discord community that we're talking about. I think this is time to wrap up 2025, Jay. Let's put a bow on it and say thanks to all the listeners out there. And for Jay, I'm Tim. We're out. We'll be back next year with another episode of Dig Me Out.